I hope you all had a wonderful recharging time. And we're going to jump right into our second speaker, Anna. Anna is the founder, president, and the primary caretaker of the animals who make their forever home at Jenna and Friends Animal Sanctuary in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Anna is originally from Greenville, North Carolina, but has lived in the Triangle area since the mid-'80s. Anna is a longtime advocate for the animals and has spent many years preparing for her life's calling, which is to start and run her own micro-sanctuary for the pigs. She is an avid writer and is currently working on a children's book about the sanctuary. And our club has actually visited the sanctuary last semester, and it was a wonderful experience. I know that a lot of us left inspiring, and we all left with a favorable pick at the place. And I'm sure you're going to inspire us today too. So the mic is on you.
Thanks. Yeah. Testing. Hear me okay in the back? A little higher.
Is it turned on?
Yes. Let's see, I'm hoping to use this. Is this a little better?
Yes.
I'll try to speak up a little bit too. Just stop me if you can't hear me. Is that better? Okay, great. And I got this working as well. Yes, okay. Well, hi everybody, I'm Anna. Anna O'Neill. I'm the founder and primary caretaker at Jenna and Friends Animal Sanctuary. I'm about 5 miles west of Chapel Hill, and I'm only 8 miles away from Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge through the back roads. So if you've been there, you've been really close to me as well. Jenna and Friends is currently home to about 220 rescued pigs. I've got 1 rooster, 1 dog, and 2 cats, hundreds of squirrels. I've got several families of deer, got lots of birds, millions of insects. I feed lots of animals, but you get the picture. So I started the sanctuary about 10 years ago, and I received my 501c3 nonprofit status a little after that. So that's actually got that 9 years ago, last month actually. So I'm thrilled to be here today to talk to you about my little slice of piggy heaven, how I got started, where I am today, and the impact it's had over me over the years, and not to mention the animals in the community. I'll also present some of the gotchas I've learned along the way and give you some pointers about possibly starting your own micro sanctuary in your own backyard or whatever little peaceful corner of the world you can find. But before I wanted to get started, I was thrilled when Jeremy asked me to speak today, and I found out that Gene Bauer was going to be here. I know he's not here yet, but I was thrilled. I met Gene about 20 years ago, I guess, at a farm sanctuary symposium in Philadelphia. And I remember sitting next to him at our luncheon that we had after the speakers. And I remember sitting next to him and telling him, I'm going to have an animal sanctuary one day. And he was so sweet and positive and just, and I can't wait to tell him, I did it. I actually did it. But anyway, I'm thrilled. But okay, let's see if I can do 2 things at once. Here we go. Okay. So Jenna and Friends is a peaceful refuge for pot-bellied pigs and farm pigs, and I started the sanctuary in 2015. But you're probably thinking, okay, if your name's Anna, who is Jenna? So Jenna was my beautiful dog. Right when I was starting the sanctuary, she passed away pretty unexpectedly and quickly. I was right in the middle of getting my legal documents in place, my nonprofit status and all of that. And I was right in the middle of coming up with a name for the sanctuary. And so when she passed, it just seemed appropriate to name it after her. And I mentioned this on my website, but my goal of naming the sanctuary after her is to keep her memory alive and to serve as a constant reminder to me that my purpose is and always will be to care for, rescue, and provide love and compassion to our animal friends as long as we live. So that's Jenna. I'm Anna. That's Jenna. But if you call me Jenna, I'll answer. Because Jeremy always corrects him. He's like, Anna. He's like, Jenna. I mean, Anna. I'm like, it's fine. Just whatever. So my mission is based on 3 founding principles. 1, provide a loving and safe forever home for pigs in need. 2, serve as an example for others who want to start a small rescue in their community with little or no funding. And 3, educate others about the plight of pigs who suffer the consequences of the food industry and breeding operations. Next slide. So I wanted to, just without giving you an autobiography about my whole life, I wanted to give you a little bit about my history, my journey. A lot of people ask me, well, how did you get started doing this? Did you always know you wanted to start an animal sanctuary? Just kind of how did you get here? And so I'm just going to give you a high-level overview of how I got where I am, rescuing pigs, running a nonprofit. I've basically been laying down the foundation for this for literally decades. And starting with my childhood in the 70s. Yes, I'm that old. So 1970s. So while Gene Bauer was selling veggie dogs at Grateful Dead concerts, I was laying down the foundation for what was to come. I always loved animals. I was very fortunate to have parents who allowed me to care for animals in our home. I had the typical dogs, cats, hamsters, mice, rabbits, fish. I always had a special bond with my dogs and cats, though. I taught them how to read, how to write. I taught them math on my little chalkboard. I read them stories. I read my dog the entire Bible in the 5th grade. I observed their personalities. I just loved how they interacted with the world around them. I saw the way they communicated with each other. I saw them experience the same emotions that I had: love, fear, pain, grief. They were curious little creatures with a huge sense of awe and a desire to live and explore and be part of the world, just like me. So at this point, I knew there were millions of animal species out there. I mean, yes, I watched Jacques Cousteau. I read National Geographic. This is when Mutual Omaha's Wild Kingdom was on the TV. I saw all of that. And so I knew there was those animals out there, a lot of animals I'd never met before. I didn't know anything about them, but I knew they were out there. But so I was still very focused on companion animals, though, at that point, because that's all I'd ever known. And the only farm animals I knew at that point in my life were on my dinner plate. So let's move on to the 80s. I was in high school, going to college. MTV was just starting off. They actually played music videos back then. Motley Crue, Metallica were in my tape deck. Purple Rain, Top Gun was in the theaters. I came to Chapel Hill in 1986 to attend college. Sorry, Duke fans, I'm a Tar Heel, sorry. It's all right. It's all right, it's all right. Maybe not this year, but we got better in basketball. That's the 80s, that's really the time of my life where I started becoming more aware of environmental issues and mass-scale production of farm animals and how that contributed to those environmental issues. I started learning about what goes on in factory farming. I was sickened by it. I started seriously questioning my food choices and wondering how, on one hand, I could be so against these horrific things, but then contribute to them at the same time by eating them. So I was a hypocrite. I was nothing short of ashamed and was filled with cognitive dissonance for many years. So looking back, if I were to sum up the 80s, I'd say it was a decade full of eye-opening insights, knowledge gathering, awareness. I was slowly becoming unplugged from the matrix. So 1990s, I graduated from college, started working in the real world. And now I was older, I was more emotionally and financially stable. I continued down my path to figure out this whole animal thing. I knew I wanted to do something that involved animals, but I honestly had no idea in what capacity. I continued researching and networking with animal groups and organizations. I had become vegetarian and had started experimenting with being vegan. Of course, we're talking about a time where, it was really hard to find. I didn't have Coco Bistro. Hey, Lisa. I didn't have Coco Bistro, vegan restaurant, and all these wonderful places that we have today, and Whole Foods filled with stuff. That was unheard of. But I started traveling. I started traveling at that time in my life too. And looking back, that's traveling to me is kind of is a pivotal moment in my journey. It really was. I worked at Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah for a while. I was working as a caretaker in Cat Town. But that's when I quickly realized that the medical side of things was not for me. Giving shots gave me heart palpitations. And for the record, I still hate giving shots. Vet school was completely out of the picture. So I continued traveling, discovering people and places, just living my life, working, trying to make a difference by eating a vegan diet. But that craving to do more was always burning inside of me. I knew there was something more I needed to do. So here comes the 2000s. Here we are. New century. I remember ringing in the century with millions of others, wondering if all the computers and clocks were going to suddenly go nuts. Y2K, oh my God. But everything was fine. Life continued. Nothing blew up that I know of. I started attending conferences and networking more at that point in my journey. As I mentioned earlier, I attended a farm sanctuary symposium in Philadelphia, met Gene Bauer, who's basically the pioneer in this whole concept of rescuing farm animals. Every year I attended Dr. Tom Reagan and his wife's Compassionate Living Festival here in the Raleigh area. Dr. Reagan, if you remember, he passed away a few years ago. He was a prominent American philosopher and animal rights activist, known for his book, The Case for Animal Rights. He taught at NC State, just down the road in Raleigh. I met Kim Stallwood. He's a European director of the Animals and Society Institute, brilliant author and blogger. I follow him today. I learned about eating a healthy plant-based diet from Dr. Michael Greger, physician, author, and advocate. I read his 2006 book, Bird Flu, and I purposely left it in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport in hopes someone would find it and read it. And I don't know who picked up that book. I hope it changed their life. He's still cranking out books today. They're all fabulous. I was honored to hear a brilliant talk by Stephen Wise, attorney and legal scholar. This was in the early 2000s. When I saw him speak, he had just released the book, Rattling the Cage Toward Legal Rights for Animals. And in that book, he presented his case that some animals, primarily or particularly primates, meet the criteria of legal personhood and should therefore be awarded the same rights and protections we humans have. I also heard Jill Robinson talk about bear bile farming in China and her efforts to rescue those bears and spread education about that horrible practice. Today, she's the founder of Animals Asia, and they are making a significant impact in Asia. I met Karen Davis, founder of United Poultry Concerns, prominent animal rights activist focusing on the treatment of domestic fowl, particularly chickens. She was a huge advocate for the liberation of chickens, and she also recently passed away. So these folks were and still are my heroes. They were taking a stand. They were doing something. They had discovered their niche. They were using their strengths. They were using their skills. They were making a difference. And they were inspiring people like me in the audience listening. So I stood and I stood. Where did I belong in this whole animal rights movement? Where do I fit in? I marched a few protests. That was great. But that type of activism just wasn't really cutting it for me by itself. I still felt so distant from the actual animals that I was fighting for. At this point, I hadn't even spent any time with farm animals. I didn't have a relationship with one farm animal. So that realization was also another pivotal moment in my journey. And I decided at that point, I need to get to know some farm animals. So I started by visiting a little pig sanctuary south of Raleigh called Pig Pals. She's not there anymore. A woman named Penny, she had set up her property. She had potbelly pigs. She had set up her property with this little piggy town. She had all these little houses, and there was the saloon and the bank and the supermarket, and all these little piggy houses and all these pigs running around, and they were all rescues. I fell in love with them. I was hooked, and I just wanted to learn more about these beautiful creatures. I sponsored an older disabled pig named Abigail, and it was such an honor to get to know her. Little did I know that one day I would keep her memory alive by rescuing an older disabled pig and naming her Abigail. So, oh shoot, I'm forgetting to move my slides. Well, okay, actually I'm right on target. That was a lot of talking for one slide. So why potbelly pigs? So before I talk about my actual sanctuary, a lot of people are like, why potbelly pigs? And like I said, I had visited Pig Pals and I just was hooked. But let's start with the massive problem we face with homelessness. Official statistics are hard to find. They're hard to quantify for potbelly pigs. But if you ask any animal control service or pig rescue organization, we can confirm the pervasiveness of the problem based on the high number of calls, emails, social media messages that we get every single day. A 2019 blog post by Hog Haven Farm estimates that over 500,000 pigs, potbelly pigs, are considered to be pet pigs in the United States, but only 2 to 5% of those pigs remain in their adoptive homes for their entire lives. That statistic translates into 475,000 to 490,000 pigs without a permanent home. The North Carolina American Potbelly Pig Association estimates that 90% of pet pigs, that's about 450,000 pigs, become homeless at some point in their lives. If these percentages are even remotely accurate, this country is facing a colossal problem that will only worsen until it's addressed. So what's causing this massive homelessness problem? Well, from what I can tell, the primary cause of it is the breeding industry. Their goal is to raise and breed potbelly pigs for profit, paying no mind to the problems they're causing. They tell potential buyers that the pigs will stay small, the teacup pig farce. And sometimes they'll even malnourish the pigs on purpose to keep them small. So as long as breeders remain unregulated, they will continue to contribute to the problem and overwhelm organizations like mine that are already struggling with limited resources to care for the fortunate few pigs who end up in our care. So what's crazy is that we live in a time when we have instant access to information, but people are still getting duped by this teacup pig absurdity. They think their new little pig, a piglet, is going to stay 25 pounds and is going to be perfectly content staying in a dog crate all day while their owner goes to work and leaves them in their apartment. Soon that pig will be growing. They'll be calling pig rescues like me, telling us that they desperately need to rehome their pig because, well, he got bigger than I expected and he's exhibiting aggressive, destructive behavior. So the sanctuaries are full. Animal shelters may or may not take potbelly pigs. And to make matters worse, zoning laws improperly categorize potbelly pigs as agricultural or farm animals, which prevent them from living within city limits. Potbelly pigs should be categorized as companion animals, in my opinion, because, well, that's what they are. So all these are great reasons for starting a sanctuary for potbelly pigs. But all you need to do is get to know one, and you'll be hooked like me. They're sensitive, they're smart, they're beautiful, they're emotional. They have strong personalities. They form deep bonds with their herd mates. They have the most fascinating communication styles. They're full of life. I'm going to cry. Okay, planning it all out and my big gotcha moment. So I had a plan. Okay, I'm going to start a sanctuary for pigs. That was clear as day in my head. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Nothing was going to stop me. I'm on it. So I continued volunteering at Pig Pals. I learned about pig behavior, what they needed to live a long, healthy life. I learned what to expect from the vet. I learned about what types of infrastructure they needed, what to feed them, and most importantly, what not to feed them. I started helping out at Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge before they had the first animal, building buildings and painting and things like that, just learning about sanctuaries. What are we doing here? What do I need to do to get started? So I started looking for properties. And at first I looked at big properties, like 20 acres. That was my goal. And the only thing I could afford was way out in the country, like way past Siler City at that point. I was thinking, my way of thinking was, how am I going to start an animal sanctuary without this huge plot of land out in the country? I was thinking, okay, I'll have tons of volunteers. I can get donations from the local community. I can hire caretakers and people to build stuff. I can get handymen. it's going to be fabulous. And but as much as this idea thrilled me to the core, I was scared. This was risky. I mean, I had a good job in big tech, which I've been doing for 25 years now, working from home. And I always made good money, but I certainly wasn't wealthy. And but so something about this whole plan was keeping me up at night. What if I didn't get all of those volunteers? What if I lost my job? What if I didn't get those donations? What if I broke my leg? What if I got sick? Anything could happen. So one day my realtor sent me a listing for a property that was just shy of 3 acres. And I was like, nah, there's no way, it's not big enough for an animal sanctuary. He's like, just come look at it. He'd already looked at the covenant. There were no restrictions on animals. Everything, he said it's perfect. It's only 5 miles away from Chapel Hill. So I went and I looked, and it was a cool little property. It was 3 acres, all mostly woods, with a little cabin in the middle. But I'd seriously already written it off, though. I was like, I can't. It's not big enough. It's not big enough. I can't have an animal sanctuary on this small of a property. There's no way. And so, I kept thinking about it. And I'd go back home and I would sleep, and I kept thinking about that little house and the property. And I went back a few times, and I kept walking the perimeter of the property, and it just felt right. It just felt like home. And so I went back again, and that's when I had my big aha moment. I was just standing there in the woods, just kind of envisioning what it could look like. And I was like, I can do this. I can afford this property. I don't need 20 acres to rescue some farm animals. I'm going to make this work. But I need to scale it back. So that's what I did. To making it a reality, I bought that property. And I started making my little sanctuary a reality. I researched like crazy. I shadowed Penny at Pig Pals. I learned the ropes. I started getting all my legal documents in order. I got my business plan written. I applied for my 501c3 status. I purchased a barn. I hired some folks to customize it with stalls and ramps. They whacked their way through that thick brush and installed fencing. I created my website, my social media accounts. I started spreading the word, got supporters. And then it happened. One day, I learned about Mandy, this little piglet living in a crate, surrounded by barking dogs in somebody's apartment. And the ad read, the owner is going to have to get rid of this pig if no one takes her. So then it happened. That was my first rescue, Mandy. I met the lady in a parking lot, and we made the deal. I took hold of that scared, starving pig, drove her back to my barn. I cradled her all night. And while she slept in a pile of fresh straw under a heat lamp. And a few weeks later, I rescued Bobby, who was supposed to be somebody's Christmas dinner. And they turned out to be soulmates. So to this day, almost 10 years later, they're still inseparable and very much in love. It's a beautiful fairy tale of a story that unfolds before my eyes every single day. Okay, now. Okay, along comes Petey. And just like that, I was thrown a giant curveball, a curveball that soon turned out to be a giant goofball named Petey the farm pig. So according to the World Economic Forum, roughly 1.5 billion pigs are slaughtered for food in the world each year, pigs like Petey, a number that has tripled in the last 50 years. A report from Statista states that 5.47 million pigs were slaughtered in the United States alone just in the year 2023. Recent pork production statistics cite North Carolina as the third largest pork producing state in the United States, with Iowa and Minnesota ranking first and second. That may have changed. I know at one point we were second. The last time I looked, we were third, but we're at the top. So those numbers are staggering and heartbreaking. How did Petey end up at Jenna and Friends? Well, I got a call from a lady in eastern North Carolina where all the hog farming is. And she had found this tiny little piglet running through her yard, and dogs were chasing him. And she scooped him up, and she's like, what do I do with this pig? My first question was, what kind of pig are we talking about here? And so she sent me a photo, and he was a tiny little piglet, and his tail had been cropped. And I said, he's a farm pig. So commercial farmers crop pigtails at birth to prevent biting and injuries. So I told her, I said, just bring him. I wasn't really set up for farm pigs at that time. I had really designed my infrastructure for potbelly pigs, but I figured I was about to learn really fast. So Petey most likely fell off a transport truck on his way to a nursery, which is what they call facilities designed to house newly weaned or weaning pigs until they're ready for the grower finishing stage. I hate those terms. When she brought him to Jenna and Friends, he was just a tiny little piglet. I could hold him in one arm. He was tiny. And he was scared, he was tired, he was bruised, and he was squealing. That was 5.5 years ago. Today he's about 450 pounds of love and playfulness. He's thriving in a herd of potbelly pigs. And believe it or not, he's not even the dominant pig. He's my ambassador for all farm pigs. He's changing hearts and perspectives one visitor at a time. So where we are today, I currently have 20 rescued pigs, 19 potbellies, and 1 farm pig named Petey. All the potbellies are different shapes and sizes. I do have volunteers. I have a lot of student volunteers, so they tend to come and go a lot depending on when school's in session or they're gone for the summer. I have people who come just for the summer when they're back in this situation, like Tanner, for example, right there. He came out all week, took the week off work, and just came out every day to visit with the animals, and he volunteered. So, as far as regular volunteers, yes, but I have a lot of people who kind of come and go. Most of the time they come out and socialize with the pigs, because to me that's totally volunteering. These pigs need socialization, and it's really good for people just to hang out with the pigs. Of course, they're welcome to scoop poop and clean out water bowls, refill the water bowls, just general cleanup, clearing off ramps, that kind of stuff. But I never expect anyone to do hard labor unless they really want to. But to me, socializing with the pigs is 100% volunteering.
Do you think you're at your max at 25 with 3 acres? And it's kind of twofold as far as what is the life expectancy of a potbelly pig?
About like dogs, 14, 15 years would be an old pig. And that's the same with farm pigs as well. So am I at my max? No, I could fit in more pigs. I definitely could, but somebody told me this before I even started. You're going to have to get used to saying no. It's going to be tough. I know Lenore faces that every single day. You get emails, calls, and you're just like, I can't. And you try to provide resources, and you try to send them to other places. Pig Placement Network. There's other sanctuaries. They're all full. You do the best you can. But at this point, I'm at this point I try to prioritize based on the urgency of the situation. So, yeah, I could fit more pigs, but I'm keeping it. I'm trying, and that's also resources, money, time, and all of that. I have to factor all that in. So, yeah.
What's your relationship like with your neighbors?
Oh, they're all wonderful except John. So I had, I don't know if any of you follow my social media. It was about this time last year. My neighbor John, who lives behind me up on a hill, he's quirky, weird. He gets in arguments with all the neighbors. It's not just me. But he started pursuing this thing, saying that the pigs were destroying the well water or something. So he kept having people come out, and I had people come out, and I always said, yeah, please come out. And we would walk around, and water's tested, everything. They're like, you're not doing it. It's like, do you know how many farms are in Orange County? With like hundreds of animals dumping waste and whatever. You've got 20 pigs, and it's nice and clean. This one guy that came, I can't remember what organization he was from. He's like, this is the cleanest pig sanctuary I've ever been to. Or he called it a farm, but this is the cleanest pig farm I've ever been to. So needless to say, John and I don't speak anymore. And I built a fence to block us. But other than that, the neighbors are great.
First of
Oh, thank you.
I had to, as a young child, watch things happen to pigs that I see crawling their room with, and so thank you. What about altering the pigs? Like, obviously, they come unaltered. So, do they have to be spayed, neutered? I don't even know what you call it.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is, well, whether they're intact is how they refer to. All of my males are fixed, every single one of them. It doesn't matter how old they are or where they came from. The females, I take it on a case-by-case basis. I get some females that are much older. I don't see any signs of them going into heat, and it's a pretty traumatic surgery for a female. So, I mean, if it's a small female piglet, of course, I'm going to get her fixed. But I know that there are some reproductive things that go on with female pigs that you can prevent by. Plus, it's just better for them to be, they don't have to go through all of that, turmoil of not being able to breed. So not all my females are fixed. But like I said, the ones that are not are because they came from a traumatic situation and they're older, and just putting them through that, they probably already passed breeding age anyway. But no, I think it's really. But like I said, all my males are fixed. No, I'm not in the breeding business. No one's getting pregnant. Nope. You know.
So how do you handle that? Because I do dogs and cats. That's
The pig poop is not like dog poop. I mean, you can literally just fling it over the fence and it just biodegrades. I bag it up and put it on John's porch and then light it on fire. But no, I mean, I occasionally. No, I absolutely, I would never do that. I would never, ever do that to John. I have thought about it, but I've never done that. No, I mean, it's like, we'll get out there and scoop it and we'll sling it over the fence, not on John's side. But it doesn't, with 20 pigs, it's not as much as you would think. I've never had an issue with it. I actually have some people come and get it for composting and things. I have a professor at UNC that will come out and get it for his biology students to look under the microscope. I'm like, take all you want. I was like,
So obviously there's nothing quite like meeting individual pigs as ambassadors, but what have you found to be the most effective thing to say to people who still choose to eat pigs? What do you find like the best argument for behavior change on diet front?
well, I don't really, it's very rare that I have somebody come and tries to challenge me on it. They're coming to visit my sanctuary. You mean just in general?
Yeah, just your take on that.
The way I look at it, and I kind of alluded to this in my presentation, is, I've kind of explored all these different ways to be an activist. You can throw a picture, of a pig getting slaughtered, in somebody's face and try to change their mind that way, which, hey, I think that's one of the things that changed my mind, was learning what's going on. But there's also, I tend to focus on the positive things, which are, how much I love them and how much they've changed my life, and how it's not pork, it's a pig, and they have emotions and feelings. And I tell stories about them and their little quirky ways and things that they do, and the love story between Mandy and Bobby. And I've got Pedro, who lost Petunia and grieved for months. I just try to give them examples of how these animals are beautiful creatures that deserve to live, and try to persuade them that way. So that's the way I approach it. But we need people to slap those pictures in front of people and to tell them what's going on. But I just have chosen the way of compassion. So, one more question, Josh.
Yeah, so you talk a lot about pigs, which is great, but you said one roost.
Well, I didn't. Okay, so I do rescue roosters, but I never go around, and I'm not Lenore like at Piedmont Farm, where they are very much set up to rescue birds. They've got it going on. They know exactly what to do. They've got the infrastructure. They've got it all set up. I'm not going to admit for 1 second that I am all set up for roosters. I usually have 1 or 2 roosters at a time, and they're safe. They stay in the barn at night. I'm not going to have them running around and getting killed by predators, but I'm not an expert on roosters, and oh my gosh, they're harder to take care of than pigs. I'm telling you. I mean, they're delicate little creatures, and they're easily, there's predators and there's all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I always have a little rooster running around. And they have a really good relationship with the pigs. I've never had a rooster that didn't get along with the pigs that didn't like roosters. There's always a very beautiful relationship between those animals. And I always say, one of these days, instead of building more and more pig houses, I'm going to get really set up for roosters. I'm going to do it because there's a lot of roosters that need homes. People won't take roosters. People go to Tractor Supply and they get little chicks. And of course, one's going to be a rooster, and they live in town, and people start complaining because they're crowing. And next thing you know, who takes roosters? There's a few places here and there, but most people will dump them off in the woods, and then they're going to last maybe a day. So it's a problem. Roosters, that's a real problem. But anyway, but thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry, I think I went over.
No, you're perfect. And I encourage you all to donate to sanctuaries such as Anna's at Jenna and Friends Farm Sanctuary, also the Piedmont Farm, the Animal Refuge as well. So thank you so much.